Another new element that comes with the Next Generation ELA and Math standards is the new Next Generation Learning Standards for literacy in history, social studies, science, and technical subjects. This document can also be accessed from the Next Generation website. Once you're on the Next Generation Standards website, we can once again click on the English Language Arts Learning Standards link on the menu bar at left. And as we scroll down, you can find the document that's labeled New York State Next Generation Grades 6 through 12 Learning Standards for Literacy. Go ahead and click on that. This document really serves to emphasize the shared responsibility for content area teachers in grades 6 through 12 to integrate literacy practices into their classrooms as well. Now we'll get an overview of the document and then you'll have some time to explore this on your own. So on pages 2 and 3, the document really provides an overview of the rationale behind the document, as well as a description of how to read the document, including a key. You'll notice as we proceed that just as the main ELA standards have anchor standards followed by interpretations of how those anchor standards work at different grade levels, this document does the same, and we'll explore that further in a moment. So here's the key that shows you how to read it with the grade level, the strand name, and the grade band, and then how it's broken down. Now, on page 4, we get into an element that talks about the shared responsibility for literacy development. Regardless of which level you teach, this document is applicable to you, even though it is labeled grades 6 through 12. See paragraph 2. It says this common goal shows up even more fundamentally at the elementary level, where a typical instructional model includes a teacher who provides instruction in a variety of subjects, including ELA. Although the literacy standards share similar goals with the ELA standards, they are also recognized that each subject has its own discourse practices and nomenclature. And immediately below this statement, there's this element called what is literacy? And that's really written in for content area teachers who may have extensive training in their own subject, but may not regard themselves as literacy teachers or have not had the opportunity to have training there. Page 5 gives an overview of how all of this information can be integrated. And then on page 6, there's a detailed element that talks about the range and the quality and the complexity expectations for students reading in grades 6 through 12. You'll notice that it includes genres of literary and informational text, which could be really helpful to both a science or social studies or technical teacher. And then on page 7, we see for the first time the specific anchor standards for reading. So these are the anchor standards that will be interpreted at each grade band. And on page 8, we see them for writing as well. So after this point, we go into a domain-specific interpretation of these anchor standards by subject area. So let's go to page 9 for a moment. The first thing that we see in the upper right-hand corner is that this page is specifically designed for teachers in grades 6 through 8. And then we see also just a little further down what subject area this is in. So this one is also history and social studies. So this page is for a teacher, a middle school teacher of history or social studies. And then they move into the reading standards or the interpretation of the anchor standards at that level. On the next page, it's the same set of standards, but interpreted for grades 9 and 10. And on the next page, we have the same set of standards interpreted for grades 11 and 12. So let's look briefly at a progression of a standard and how it increases in its complexity expectation. We're going to jump back to page 9 for just a minute and look specifically at RH5, which indicates reading in history, anchor standard 5. And it says, describe how a text presents information sequentially, comparatively, causally, visually, and graphically. And then at grades 9 through 10, they actually didn't change that standard at all. It remained just the same. Again, describe how a text presents information and so on. But then RH5 at the grades 11 and 12 level has increased substantially in its complexity. So analyze in detail how a complex primary source, like a text, image, map, graphic, etc., is structured, including how key sentences, paragraphs, and larger portions of the source contribute to the whole. So that's just sort of a breakdown of how that standard is broken down at each grade level. Now that you've sorted through one of the reading standards articulated across the grade levels, you probably have a general overview of how the document is organized. We're going to do a quick skim of the document at the other levels and subject areas, and then you'll be free to do some exploration on your own. So beginning on page 12, we actually see the reading standards for science and technical subjects start to be articulated, and that's written right here, science and technical subjects. Again, the grade level right here, 6 through 8. And again, same thing, science and technical subjects, this time in grades 9 through 10. And science and technical subjects, this time in grades 11 and 12. Beginning on page 15, we transition to the writing standards. These standards mainly focus on writing arguments, informative text, narratives, and responses, but research is also addressed at the different grade levels. So here's the writing standards for literacy and history and social studies, science, and technical subjects in grades 6 through 8, right here, broken down. The breakdown of how they want students to be writing in the content areas in grades 9 through 10. And the breakdown of how they want students to be writing in the content areas for grades 11 through 12. So now that you've seen an overview of this document, we'd like to invite you to take some time to review it in more detail for the areas that are most applicable to you. The punchline here is that every teacher, regardless of training or content area assignment, is responsible for the shared responsibility of literacy development. There's an increased focus on this in New York State about the integration of literacy practices through all the subjects, so keep that in mind as you review the document. Thank you.